If you run a manufacturing operation in Indiana, hiring and energy cost control are seemingly more complex each and every day. You've got a 2,000 job EV truck factory heading to Warsaw, capacity prices in PJM that point to higher bills for Northeast Indiana, and a fight in Washington over who pays to keep an aging coal plant in Wheatfield running under federal emergency orders. All three impact the cost of hiring, the cost of power in the near term, and how predictable your long-term energy budget really is. In the next few minutes, I'll walk you through what's changed and the questions you can put in front of your team today or tomorrow, so hopefully you can stay ahead of the curve. If you rely on skilled production talent anywhere in Kosciusko County, a 2,000-job electric pickup truck factory in Warsaw is going to raise the stakes for your recruiting and retention and add a new major energy load to the region. Slate Auto is a Michigan-based EV startup building a low-cost, two-seat electric pickup that starts around $25,000 with the chance to get under $20,000 after federal credits. They've raised approximately $650 million across several rounds with money from people like Jeff Bezos, Mark Walter from the Dodgers, and Guggenheim and General Catalyst. They're taking over the former RR Donnelly printing complex at 2801 West Old Road 30 in Warsaw, about 1.4 million square feet across two production buildings of roughly 600,000 square feet each, plus office space sitting right next to the rail. Now, that facility used to employ about 500 people before RR Donnelly shut it down in 2023. Slate's plan is more than 2,000 jobs and up to 150,000 vehicles per year once they ramp up, with initial manufacturing targeted for the end of 2026. Senator Todd Young has already highlighted what he calls nearly $400 million of investment in Warsaw, and local economic development groups are under non-disclosure agreements while Slate finalizes the details. For you, the pressure will show up in two places. First, in labor. A 2,000-person ramp in a county that just lost 500 jobs from the same facility is going to pull on welders, maintenance techs, electricians, and production supervisors across northern Indiana. If you're already struggling to fill skilled roles, this will tighten that labor pool and push wages higher. Second, energy. A 1.4 million square foot EV assembly operation with paint, compressed air, battery conditioning, and thermal management is a serious new industrial load on that local system. That influences substation plans, transformer loading, and how the utility plans for future grid capacity in that corridor. So you should watch for Slate's public announcements, hiring fairs, and supplier outreach as they get closer to late 2026. When those start, the ramp is beginning. So here's a question for your team. How will a new 2,000-job manufacturing facility in Kosciusko County affect our talent acquisition and retention strategy over the next 3 to 5 years, especially for those skilled production and maintenance roles? Now, if your facility sits in Indiana Michigan Power's footprint in Northeast Indiana, or you buy power from any of the large investor-owned utilities in the state, the combination of national bill increases and record PJM capacity prices is going to raise your all-in energy cost over the next few years. That's pretty much a guarantee. Nationally, average electric bills have climbed about $110 per household between 2024 and 2025. That's roughly a 6% increase, with electricity prices up about 5%, while general inflation ran closer to 3%. Over the last decade, average electricity prices are going up around 30%. Since January 2025, more than 111 million utility customers across 49 states and D.C. are facing or already seeing increases totaling nearly $33 billion, with at least 242 utilities moving through rate hikes between now and 2027. Upstream, PJM's July 22nd, 2025 capacity auction for June 2026 to May 2027 year cleared at $329.17 per megawatt day. 2 years earlier, capacity had cleared around $28 per megawatt day. So last year's jump drove roughly a 30% bill increase for about 65 million people in PJM, and the 2026-2027 result adds another 5% to that region. Data centers and reliability issues on gas-fired generation are the primary drivers. A 2025 auction still showed more than 6,000 megawatts of reliability shortfall, even at a price cap above $330 per megawatt day. Indiana sits across two grids. Most of the state Duke, AES Indiana, NIPSCO, CenterPoint is in MISO. Northeast Indiana and Indiana Michigan Power are in PJM. On the retail side, Duke customers are absorbing about an 11% overall increase in two steps. NIPSCO residential customers are seeing around a 16.75% phased in, and AES Indiana has stacked, requested, and approved increases that could push customers toward a 20% total increase by the end of 2026 when you add grid projects and new storage. Commercial and industrial tariffs follow the same trend line, even if the exact percentages differ, and they do on the high side. So if you're on I&M in the Northeast, you're looking at PJM-driven capacity costs raising your bill around another 5% on top of whatever your tariff already shows. If you're on Duke, NIPSCO, AES, or CenterPoint and MISO, you've got your own set of rate cases, plus MISO's resource adequacy concerns and a queue of about 25 new projects that need to be online by August 2028 to keep prices from following PJM's upward trend. So watch the June 2026 PJM auction for the 2028 and 2029 year and MISO's progress on getting those 11 plus gigawatts actually interconnected. So here's a question for your team around this. Given the rate cases already approved or filed and the PJM auction results, what do our electricity costs look like in 2026 and 2027? By facility, and which energy efficiency or demand management projects can we move from someday maybe to this year absolutely to blunt those increases and get ahead of the curve. Now, if you buy power in NIPSCO territory or anywhere in the MISO grid, the legal fight over cost allocation for NIPSCO's Schafer coal units in Wheatfield will determine whether you and other commercial customers pay locally or share that burden across 11 states for a plant MISO already said could retire. Schafer units 17 and 18 in Jasper County are coal-fired units from the early and mid 1980s with about 847 megawatts of combined generation capacity. They've had serious mechanical problems, including a forced outage of around 2,890 hours in early 2025 after a turbine blade separated, followed by another long outage that started in July 2025 due to condenser tube damage. NIPSCO's leadership has said Unit 18 basically needs to be rebuilt and could take more than 6 months to restore. And NIPSCO had planned to stop burning coal at Schafer by the end of 2025 under its Your Energy, Your Future transition, and MISO had signed off on the retirement from a reliability standpoint. Then on December 23rd, 2025, the Department of Energy used its emergency powers under Section 202C to order NIPSCO and MISO to keep units 17 and 18 available. A second order the same day kept CenterPoint's Cully Unit 2 in Warwick County online. On March 23, 2026, DOE extended the Schafer directive through June 21st, 2026, and the Department of Energy has used this authority more than 40 times since May 2025 across multiple states. And it's worth noting the retirement of coal units, no matter the reliability issues, exacerbates the capacity gap. Taking capacity offline while simultaneously enhancing the level of load on the grid creates a capacity shortfall that does drive significant cost and reliability issues across the grid, and that's a part of what we've seen over the last 2 years. Operating Schafer and Cully under the initial 90-day orders was estimated at over $20.6 million, with potential maintenance and environmental costs climbing toward $34 million if the orders keep rolling. Synapse Energy Economics, in a report for several public interest groups, estimates gross operating costs around $317,900 per day for the Schafer units alone. At the state level, NIPSCO told regulators that the DOE order would add about $129 million to its Step 2 rates. NIPSCO then went to FERC and asked to allocate those costs widely across the MISO North and Central subregions, essentially spreading them over an 11-state area. In March 2026, FERC approved a tariff change to do exactly that. Attorneys general from Michigan, Illinois, and Minnesota, along with the Organization of MISO States and several state commissions, are now challenging that in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. Minnesota AG Keith Ellison and Illinois AG Kwame Raoul have argued that DOE misused emergency powers and that the cost allocation forces ratepayers across the Midwest, including customers who receive no reliability benefit, to pay for a deteriorated plant that MISO already said could retire safely. Michigan AG Dana Nessel has called it a manufactured emergency. OMS even highlighted that Indiana customers themselves may get no reliability benefit from this order, yet still pay the bill. Now, I can tell you from my experience in this industry that this assessment is partial at best. But if the court upholds FERC's decisions, those Schafer costs get diffused across the whole MISO North and Central footprint, softening the per customer hit, but adding another line in the long-term cost stack. If the court overturns the allocation, NIPSCO customers in northwestern Indiana carry more of the burden locally. That outcome sits on top of NIPSCO's roughly 17.75% increase already approved on residential and a significantly higher percentage approved across the commercial rates. So watch for rulings or procedural updates out of the DC Circuit and keep an eye on how often DOE continues to use this Section 202C for other plants. The question for your team is this: how are we baking the possibility of more emergency orders and regional cost allocation into our long-term energy procurement strategy, especially if we operate in NIPSCO territory or depend on suppliers who do? Today, you're dealing with tighter labor competition in Warsaw, rising capacity and retail energy costs across both PJM and MISO, and a federal court fight that will decide whether Indiana manufacturers pay locally or regionally for an aging coal plant in Wheatfield. Slate Auto's EV truck factory brings more than 2,000 jobs and a substantial new load to Kosciusko County. PJM's record $329 capacity price and the stack of Indiana rate cases means 2026 and 2027 power bills go up, with different utilities moving at different speeds. And the Schafer case tells you that even plants MISO has cleared for retirement can be pulled back into service and cost allocated across multiple states under emergency orders. With the grid experiencing record high electrification and capacity demands, capacity needs to be there. So it's a complex topic. The bottom line today is this: you cannot treat energy and labor as a stable background item in your cost structure anymore. You can't do that. Between new manufacturing capacity in Warsaw, capacity auctions at PJM, and emergency orders on coal units in Wheatfield, Indiana manufacturers need a clear view of where their people will come from and exactly how their all-in cost of electricity will rise between now and at least 2028. Now, obviously, I don't run your plant. You do that. But my real job as the CEO of Tactical Energy Group is to stay on top of everything that changes the cost and reliability of your power and the economics, really, of making things in Indiana so we can build the right products and programs to help support the manufacturing community. While I'm doing that work anyway, this brief is my way of giving you as much of that insight as I possibly can so you can spend more time running your operation and less time trying to decode your bills and understand rate cases and interpret the headlines. So I'll give you a few questions you could take into your morning huddle, talk about them Monday, Tuesday. If they stump you, if you're not exactly sure, then you might not have a firm handle on how today's headlines show up in your hiring plan and your budgeting for energy costs. So the first question is this: what specific strategies can we implement now to recruit and retain talent, anticipating the increased competition from a new large-scale manufacturing operation like Slate Auto's Warsaw plant in northern Indiana? Second, how thoroughly have we analyzed our energy contracts and consumption patterns in light of ongoing Duke, NIPSCO, AES Indiana, and Indiana Michigan power rate increases and the PJM capacity auction results? And what immediate efficiency or demand management steps can we take this year to reduce that exposure? Third, for any facilities or key suppliers in NIPSCO territory, how might the Schafer cost allocation dispute, depending on how it lands, and DOE's emergency orders change our long-term electricity cost forecasts? And are we modeling different outcomes for local cost recovery versus regional cost recovery? It's important. It's not common, but it's important that you start to consider and model those things. Now, the fourth question is this: do we have a simple, up-to-date map of which facilities and which of our critical suppliers sit in PJM versus MISO so we can prioritize where rising capacity costs and emergency orders could hit us the hardest? It's important that you know these things. So listen, if this helped you see today's headlines a little bit more clearly and it helped you see them through the lens of your own operation, then send it to another Indiana manufacturer who should be on top of these things and who you don't want to be caught off guard by these changes. The more informed the manufacturing community is, the harder it is for bad decisions upstream to quietly raise your costs. I'm Daniel Burke. This is TEG Daily, Indiana Manufacturing News, and I'll see you on Monday.